Yes. Hello, America. Tonight, very serious discussion. Very serious. Have you decorated your tree yet? You know, the apocalypse tree. I have mine. I've been hanging little plastic fire and brimstone ornaments on it all week. I've been explaining to my lovely children how the world will soon come to an end and all of their favorite stuffed animals and cartoon characters will have to be left behind in the wallow of the apocalyptic wasteland. Kind of like Waterworld, except less water and far more fire. If for some reason you're not up on the news yet, billboards have been put up all around America telling everyone who will look and listen that Judgment Day is coming. In fact, it's coming tomorrow. Hurry. May 21st, 2011 at 6 p.m. Depending on your time zone, see local listings for details. At 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, a great earthquake will come. And then at 6 p.m. Central, they get the earthquake. And it sort of goes from east to west across America for the next few hours. Hawaii, you get yours, I don't know, what is it, 6 hours over to you? So that's how it's going to happen. Now, after the true believers will be changed into glorified spiritual bodies, everybody else just suffers for months. And then the world is finally destroyed. And they call me depressing. This is all according to the Family Radio Worldwide, a California network. Who would have guessed this would have come from California? And they're the ones responsible for all the doomsday advertising, and this is their ad that is playing right now. You might be wondering about the fact that the Bible says no man will know the date. Well, they have an answer for that. It's true. You will not know the date, but they will. You see, only true believers can decode the Bible's hidden messages to reveal that the end of the world comes before this Memorial Day. In fact, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Please remember, check local listings. In fact, not only will the evil heathens of the world get taken by surprise by the end of the world tomorrow, you know, if you're a churchgoer, you're going to be saying, what happened? The reason why you're going to be surprised is because of the end of the church age. That was in 1994, of course. Anyone still in a church by tomorrow isn't a true believer and is not going to, well, it's not going to go so well around 6-ish tomorrow for you. Now, sure, this might sound ridiculous, but apparently not everyone thinks it's ridiculous. In fact, one retired MTA worker, I'm wondering, when you finish the sentence, you'll wonder too, he just spent $140,000 on an ad campaign in the subway. Yes, are you wondering, he's an MTA worker. Where did he get $140,000? He works for the city. And now he's spending it on these ad campaigns. I mean, with the world ending tomorrow, why not? Who needs the cash? Can't take it with you. By the way, don't confuse tomorrow's apocalypse with the apocalypse that the exact same guy from Family Radio predicted back in 1994. Apparently he got a little confused. It was the end of the church age and not the end of the whole world. We've been looking into the history books this week for about 24 seconds, and I don't think the apocalypse actually occurred in 1994. That's right, church age. Now, also another confusing fact, back in 1994, the song The Sign by Ace of Base was actually out, and that might have been a sign. But what do I know? I'm crazy because I'm a churchgoer, so what do I know? That's why I brought the experts in tonight. Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, he is the executive vice president of the New York Board of Rabbis. David Barton is here. He is a historian. He'd know about apocalyptic stuff. He's also the president of Wall Builders. And Pastor Tom Mullins. I warn you, he is the founding pastor of Christ Fellowship Church in Florida, meaning he's a churchgoer. He's going to be one of the surprised tomorrow at 6.
Well, Glenn, here's the bottom line.
Yeah.
The Bible teaches us, actually, there is no hidden code. Not even Christ, the Son of God.
Churchgoer, that's exactly what he would say.
Jesus Christ does not even know. Only the Father knows the hour or the day. So I'm pretty confident the 21st is not the day.
All right, so you are prepared for me to call you on Monday when you are clearly proven wrong.
If I'm proven wrong, the phone lines won't be working on that.
That's the kind of game those churchgoers play, isn't it? David, are you all packed for tomorrow?
Not for that.
No,
I've got lots of other plans for tomorrow. Not that.
Rabbi.
I'm trying to convince all the people who say 21st is the end of the earth. to convey their accounts to me on the 22nd. All right, so no one has thus far signed anything over to me.
These advertisements, they talk about a book coming out. And you're looking at this ad and you're like, wait a minute, end of the world is Saturday.
Buy the book?
Buy the book. Like, I hope it's short because I don't have a lot of time. So what we really wanted to talk about was the Black Robe Regiment. We have gotten a lot of mail over the last year since 828 about it. And David, you've kind of been heading that up, and you've been telling me you have a lot to report, so we want to get a little to that. And we also wanted to talk a little bit about our trip that we announced to Israel, called Restoring Courage. So why don't we start there? You were with me, David, last week. I went, and did you think I was kind of nuts when I first? No.
No, okay. I did not. I thought it was exactly right.
Okay. Because we traveled with somebody who thought, in fact, most of my staff still thinks I'm out of my mind, that we were going to do this. But it was a powerful experience when we went last week to Israel to try to find the place of where we will do it. What was it that you took away from that trip?
I don't know how to say it. There's a couple places I've been in Israel that when I get there, I really feel like I'm on holy ground. It's really somber. You just keep your mouth shut, you keep your ears open, and you keep your heart open. And that's what I felt like on the trip. This is really significant. This is literally a potential world-changing event. It's not a small thing. And I really felt the weight of that as we were looking at venues and places. I'm absolutely convinced the way you treat Israel, especially what Israel is facing right now, is the dividing line on anybody of faith, period.
I said on the radio today that I think that this is almost like, closing time.
Yeah.
It's almost like the Lord is like, okay, last call. Anybody really, or is anybody hearing me? Anybody hearing what I've been saying? Your life has been out of order, and why don't you check the writing? Because it says clearly, if you stand against, you'll be destroyed.
That's right.
Let me say firstly about this business of being crazy. The prophet said, Mishuga ish haruach. A person who's crazy is a person of spirit. Because it's the crazy people who are the iconoclasts. They challenge the status quo. I wish we had more crazy people like you who are standing with us. Jews very often feel isolated. They feel alone. So we need friends. And for you to stand in Israel and to say that we are with you, I think is very reassuring and is something we should be grateful for and thank you for all that you are doing on our behalf.
I think honestly, honestly, I mean, can I make it about me a little bit? It's not about you or the Jewish people or anything. It is truly about doing what God has told us as individuals to do. He's saying that there is a time that will come and you have to stand. If more people would have stood in Germany, we wouldn't have had this problem.
Exactly.
I mean, think of how the world would be different if they would have stood up with Bonhoeffer at that time.
Glenn, and I think the church has really captured the true heart of the covenant with Abraham and that covenant blessing that all those who bless Israel, they too are truly blessed. And we're recognizing our great heritage that came out of Israel. I mean, every word of God that's been written was written by a Jewish person, a Jewish follower of God that was inspired by God. The only exception we have in our New Testament is Luke, and who really he converted his heart over to the heartbeat and traditions of Judaism and embracing, of course, Yeshua, Jesus, as his Messiah. We have this great gift, and we also have this great covenant. And we are to honor God's word because God's word is never ending. So when that covenant was given in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, that covenant is still real today for us in 2011 and will be. And I just want to say this, Rabbi, when you mentioned that many times you feel isolated and alone, I want you to know that the Christian church is standing with you. And I know the evangelical world believes and stands with Israel.
Because what is it, the United Methodist Church? has come out this week and said they're not standing with
Now,
Israel.
there are several groups that won't, but the more biblical groups will stand. And those that have denied biblical tradition, biblical Christianity, biblical anything, will not be there. And that's
Of
simple.
course, I would also like to see people who are not religious stand with us out of a sense of justice. There are people who are secular say it's the right thing to do. Fairness is being with you. Looking at history, we should stand with you because of the wrongs committed against you.
See, I have to tell you, I think that there are so many reasons to do it. I think there is one, it is what all of us are commanded to do. The second reason is it is the right thing to do.
Yes.
I mean, you can look at this and say, my gosh, evil and good here are so apparent, are so apparent. And all you have to do is open your eyes. There is that, and then there is also, I think the other side of it is, and this is for a religious person, we have so screwed up our world. Every time. I mean, I did it as an alcoholic. I totally screwed up my life and totally bottomed out. And then I had to set it right and go back to him and say, okay. All right, let's start at the beginning. How do I do this again? And that's really what the world needs to do. The world is in chaos. It's in chaos. Nothing will solve this.
Lyndon Baines Johnson, who wasn't particularly religious, was asked once, why do you side with Israel? All the Arab countries have the oil. Go where the oil is. They have sand on Israel. He said, because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Look at the histories. It's the right thing to do. So I would hope that people, for a host of reasons, stand together with Israel.
Well, it's the only island of democracy in the entire Middle East. And if we lose that stance, we've lost the entire Middle East.
Well, look, I mean, first of all, you lose all of the history. Let's just forget about all the God stuff around Israel. You lose all of the history. Look what the Taliban did in Afghanistan. They took those monuments of Buddha and blew them up. You don't think that's going to happen? I mean, yes, it will. Especially, you also have to look at, that's a caliphate. You wipe out Israel, you do. You have the entire Middle East. You have all of the oil, you have absolutely everything, and you have a caliphate. You don't think they're going to sweep up into Europe? Europe is this close.
What a sad commentary on human behavior, because if only those who at the present time are adversaries would think of becoming allies, what a paradise that part of the world could come.
Let me ask Ron, where are you? Up here. You live in New York City, and you had a question that kind of pertains, I think, to this.
Well, my question was, in New York City, I come across a lot of friends that are kind of sided more to the left and more into progressive agendas that they have.
Here in New York City? Really?
and many of them are Jewish, and that's and I come from Israel, so when I have conversations with them, they're in totally in shock of what I'm saying to them about what's going on, and I just don't feel that Jews particularly know much of their history and know how much suffering they had to keep on thinking that they can go on in their way and not change and become more knowledgeable about getting out of their progressive agendas.
I have to ask you, Rabbi, a lot of people, I think, will say some of the biggest people that are anti-Israel also happen to be Jewish. And it's a disconnect. How does that work?
It's shameful. I mean, I'm not going to make excuses for it. Somebody once said that the tribes were not lost. They were bar mitzvahed, and then they disappeared. And how many times we find that that's the last connection some people have with the Jewish community, with the Jewish world. So we have to do a much better job in terms of education. But I always wonder when people praise, the left or the extreme left, where are these places that are so favorable to Jews and Christians? Venezuela, that's a good place for Jews. Cuba is a good place for Jews. So I think it's a matter of trying to have them recognize the truth, but let them read the truth not written by Jews, because they'll say you're biased. Let them read books written by non-Jews, by those who would not have a bias according to their logic. And the other thing is this, look at how Christians are treated in a lot of these places. Don't just look how Jews are treated.
Oh,
if that's what they do to Christians.
Look at the Coptic Christians in Egypt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, honestly, if you've ever been to Israel, the amazing thing is you walk the streets of the old city, you will go into places like the Church of the Last Supper, and it is all it's Islamic phrases on the walls. It has been defaced. You will see. I noticed that there are a lot of synagogues that have been bombed and destroyed.
Yeah.
But I see in the Christian section, I see in the Jewish section, I see the minarets. They're still standing. They're not being used, but they're still standing. There is with some, not all, there is a willingness or a desire to wipe everyone else out.
Glenn, the great thing about Israel today is that the Christians are free to worship in their faith. The Jews are free to worship, and so are the Muslims free to worship. If we lose Israel, we're going to lose all of our freedoms, and all the faiths will lose their freedoms except for one.
Well, I mean, it
faith.
really is, to me, it really seems, I mean, it is the old saying, first they came for the Jews.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the first.
Right.
You're not the last.
Right.
You're the first.
Right. It begins with Jews, but it doesn't end with Jews.
It never does.
Yeah, and you couldn't have this kind of demonstration between 48 to 67. Right? Jews weren't allowed to go to the wall. They could see the wall from afar, but they could never pray there. Why? Why weren't Jews allowed to go to their holy sites during all these years? Because there was a form of intolerance it's amoral, and yet there are those who claim to be religious who refuse to recognize the religious validity of another group.
I will tell you, America, that I know a lot of people, because I've read the Mail, boy, it's strange to be me, because I am apparently an anti-Semite Jew lover, which is amazing.
Drive you to drink?
He'll drive you to drink. I'm an alcoholic, been there, done that. But we put this together, and it is happening in August, called Restoring Courage, and it has nothing about it. Honestly, you will see courage in the Israelis. When you get over there. It has more to do with our courage. You can find all of the information today at glennbeck.com, but as you walk through that city, you will feel a power unlike anything I've ever felt before. And then let it sink in that if the lines go back to 1967 and Jerusalem is divided, the entire holy city, the entire old city is lost to the world. That is a powerful, powerful loss. When we come back, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, he is a man that I spent time with in Jerusalem last week. He'll join us for a few minutes. Back in a minute. Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, he is the Chancellor of Or Torah Stone and Chief Rabbi of the city of Efrat. Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, he is the Executive Vice President, New York Board of Rabbis, and David Barton is here. He is the founder and president of Wall Builders, and Pastor Tom Mullins. He is the founding pastor of Christ Fellowship Church in Florida. Rabbi, how are you?
Great.
I saw you last week in Jerusalem.
Much better place.
In Jerusalem or New York?
Jerusalem.
Yeah, I was going to say, you say New York, you're a liar. We spoke, and last week when I came to Jerusalem, I spoke to a lot of people, and everybody here was telling me, this is crazy, don't do it. You said, basically, people have got to stand together, and they've got to come together. Why?
This is the second chance for the world. Between 1939 and 1945, the Jews stood alone. And when there's a madman who stands against the Jews, it starts with the Jews and it ends up with the entire free world. We saw it with the Nazis. We saw it with Stalin as well. This is the second chance. Israel's on the line now.
I saw what the leader of Hamas said this week, where he was saying the Jews are worse than vermin. They are they're worse than any bacteria. And I thought, boy, this is Goebbels again.
This is Mein Kampf, a page out of Mein Kampf.
What I found what's interesting is they're very clear as to what they mean. We don't want to think that they mean that because we try to camouflage, we try to cover up and say, they're really not saying that. Hitler was very clear, Hamas is very clear, Hezbollah is very clear.
I think we're still in the warm-up of what's coming. And they're very clear. Yeah. They are annihilate and kill every Jew on the planet.
How sad is that? Hitler was better, right?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't mean. You know,
what a sad commentary.
Evil is evil.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
What I'm trying to say is, our eyes weren't open because I read Mein Kampf, and with retrospect, it's absolutely clear he meant it. These guys are horrifying. And what makes us think that they don't mean it, especially just less than a century away from the last time it happened?
And Al-Qaeda says the great Satan is America. In other words, it's not just the Jews or Israel. It's America. It's the free world.
What you said is it's a second chance for the world. And I think that's significant because it's not about Israel. Israel's about the world. And I really think Israel's a litmus test for everybody.
It is.
If you get that wrong, if you're wrong on the Jews, if you're wrong on Israel, everything else is wrong. And that is a chance for the world to stand right.
So what does this mean? Because I've gotten a lot of mail this week after we announced it. Some of it is good. Some of it is profoundly evil. Some of it that's just kind of bad just says, great, this is what Israel needs. A whole bunch of Americans and people from all around the world coming while they're in a crisis. What does this mean to people in Israel?
I think it means the world. I think we do feel very much isolated. Yeah. And I've got to tell you, from my point of view, one of the miracles that's happened with the ingathering of the exiles and our return to Israel is the fact that the Christian world has held out their hands to us. And there are times during the past intifadas when nobody was coming to visit us, certainly not to visit me in the territories, in the settlements. But the Christians came, and it meant a great, great deal.
And I find that hate mongers have no problems forming coalitions. Hate mongers find each other. They can have different views on other things. When it comes to hating Jews, hating Christians, they are together. Where are we going to have the opponents to hate mongers? That's why this kind of demonstration is a manifestation of goodness over evil.
When I was at the wall last week, they were celebrating their independence, and I thought, I've never felt the kind of joy that the Jews who were celebrating felt about their independence, because they lost their state. We haven't lost ours. So I've never experienced that joy. And a man came up to me, and he recognized me, and he turned around and he came up to me and he shook my hand, and he said, "Thank you for saying what you say." He said, "We feel very alone here." And I had sensed that, and it was such a powerful statement. Again, the world has the opportunity to either say, I don't see what's happening in the ghetto, or standing up and saying, no, 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 never again. It's powerful how alone Israel is in the region.
I just must tell you, I don't really feel alone, because to be alone with God is to be with a majority of one. And we feel that way. Yeah. And especially having returned to Israel after the Holocaust, we know that God is with us. And I think there is a certain profound sense of security. I think it's for humanity's sake, even more than for our sake, because it's the same issues at stake now.
It's us.
Yeah, it is.
It's us.
Right.
How do you deal with like your children in Israel when you have people say, like Hamas, you're worse than vermin, we're going to kill you all, drive you into the sea? How do you do that with your children? Explain that.
To a certain extent, that's been the genius of Judaism through the last, certainly 2,000 years of terrible persecution. Don't forget, we make a blessing every morning, thanking God for having chosen us from all other nations and given us the Bible. We feel that we gave the greatest gifts to the world through us, which God gave to us. The Ten Commandments, fundamental morality, the idea of freedom.
That's right.
America is founded on these ideals. And that's what people are fighting for when they fight for Israel.
You know, there was a poll taken, Gallup poll, about the happiest people in the world, and Israel is number 8 in the world. Now here you are hurting, and yet you're in the top 10 of being happy. So to be happy and to be in pain at the same time is a marvelous, marvelous statement about faith in humanity and faith in God and faith in one another.
You know, I will tell you that I've been to Israel twice, and each time I have felt more safe there than any other place I've ever been. And it has nothing to do with guns, it has everything to do with the people. They are wide awake, and it is a powerful, powerful place on earth. Back in just a minute. We're back with Rabbi Joseph Potosnik and David Barton, and Pastor Tom Mullins is with us now. I want to get to the Black Robe Regiment here and some more questions, but I want to pick up where we were just talking during the break. And that was, I can see why there are a lot of people that are Jewish that do not trust Christians. I mean, there's a lot of Christians I don't trust as a Christian. But, you know, the past, when I was over, over at the western wall of the temple, and you go underneath, and you see some of the things. There is one giant doorway, the closest you can get to the Holy of Holies. You know this story, David? You want to tell the story?
No, you got it.
It is where the Jews went after the Romans came in, or the Crusaders came in, and said, we have a place to pray, and it's the closest to the Holy of Holies. And very sacred thing. Well, they were walled in by the Crusaders, and the last thing they saw was a torch being thrown in to burn them all alive, and the cross, as they were walled up. Now, when in 1967 happened, and the Jews could come back in, they tried to take that wall down to recover the bodies. They found a few bodies that were all charred and exactly what they expected to find. But then the Muslims went crazy and said, you're trying to dig under the Temple Mount, and so they had to wall it back up. It's a wildly profound place to see. So, I mean, I understand people saying, what's your motivation here?
Yeah, but when's the last time there was a forced conversion? I mean, I think, you know, after hundreds and hundreds of years and expressions of support, I think we recognize that we have some real friends here. So the hidden agenda theory that I hear periodically, for me, doesn't carry any weight. I look at what people do. And the amount of support we get from the evangelical community, from Christians who are there for us, it is tremendous. It is tremendous.
The other thing you have to remember is during that period, they just as quickly killed Christians, too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you had the Inquisition going at the same times. It was just atrocious behavior.
You know, the thing that David and I talked about, because my faith is kind of the outcast in the Christian world. And I said to somebody who met me, a very good Christian, and he said it with compassion, but I've heard it the other way too. You know, Glenn, gosh, you're just doing some amazing things, and I know you're following the Spirit, but I think you're on the wrong side. And because my church is not accepted by others, when are we going to get to a point to where we look at people's fruits and we can say, by the fruits ye shall know them? Because I know a lot of Jews that are, by their fruits, are great and really wicked. Christians, really wicked, really great. I mean, I know a lot of people who are evangelicals or Catholics or whatever. It's the fruits that make the difference, isn't it?
You know, the prophet Samuel, when David was selected to be the king of Israel, and he was the most unlikely one to be selected. But a great line that Samuel declared to us from the inspiration of God is that man looks on the outward appearance of things, but God looks upon the heart. And I think the closer we draw in our faith to God, the more we begin to look beyond the surface and look to the heart of the issues.
Right.
And we have a common heart and a common bond and a common love for God and love for Israel, which is uniting the evangelical church along with the rabbi and Israel.
You know, I find one thing, if you want to measure what's in the heart, Let's see what's in the hands. Let's see what people do.
Right.
There are a lot of people who tell you they love humanity, but they don't visit the person next door.
That's right.
So it's the mitzvah, it's the do, it's the
There
do.
is, who asked the question was, where's Jeff Rice in New Jersey? Where's Jeff? Jeff, you remember your question? What was your question?
Oh, my question was, what was your favorite part of your experience in Israel, and what was your least favorite part?
Favorite part was the people of Israel. They are absolutely amazing. Hands down, the memory that I will never forget is a man who walked up to me at the Western Wall and he said, "Thank you, we feel alone at times." They're such courageous people. The worst, the least favorite was meeting with people of all faiths, and a few people came in and it was about them. And I thought, how can you possibly make this about you? How can you possibly? They would say, "I know what time it is. I know what's coming. You're right. You're right. Now listen, you know, you probably want to have a little something, you know, with me." And I'm like, you got to be kidding. I couldn't believe it. The people who say, "I love you, I am compassionate, or I want to do this," and then let's see what's in their hands. It's so frustrating. So frustrating.
Can I add one to that, too?
But that happens everywhere.
When we were there, I think one of the things that got me very significantly was we were there for their Memorial Day, followed by their Independence Day.
Amazing.
And unlike America, in Genesis it says that God made things and it was the evening and the morning. So their holidays start at sundown and go through. So when we went there to the Western Wall, under the Western Wall, or in the tunnels, when we went in, it was still before sunlight, and therefore it was still Memorial Day. We came out.
The flame was burning.
We came out, and it was after sundown, and so it was now Independence Day. And you go from a somber thing to celebrating and dancing and cheering and singing there at the Western Wall. But on Memorial Day, when we were going down the road, the sirens blow, and everybody in the nation stops for like 2 minutes. If you're in the middle of a 4-lane interstate, you all stop and get out in 2 minutes of silence to recognize those who have fallen in defense.
And also, I have to tell you, it does prove how stupid I am, because it was on Independence Day, and you know, here in America, July 4th, we're all out cooking with a barbecue, and everybody was in the parks cooking, and I'm like, wow, look, even here, everybody's having hot dogs, and everybody went, no, they're not having hot dogs. Back in just a minute. Rabbi Joseph Potosnik, David Barton, Tom Mullins, pastor from Florida here, and you two gentlemen were part of the Black Robe Brigade that we announced on 8/28, standing behind. And David, you guys have been working quietly for quite some time. Bring us up to speed on what's happening.
All we have now is a website, and by the way, Black Robe Regiment, for those who don't know, it's what the British called the clergy in the American Revolution. British said if it hadn't been for the preachers, America would still be a happy British colony. So they imprisoned preachers, they killed preachers. When they came to New York City, 19 churches, they burned 10 to the ground. They blamed everything on the preachers. So they were bold, courageous guys who led the military, who wrote state constitutions, who ratified the U.S. Constitution, who served in Congress. And we just don't have that backbone anymore. So we want preachers to get that backbone, be leaders in education, leaders in politics, leaders in all these things, get their voice back. And so there's a website now, blackroberegiment.wallbuilders.com, that has a ton of those old sermons that the British complained about are up there. There's a ton of information legally on what can be done today, and it's more than you think can be done. There's a lot of information with videos and everything else to equip these guys to get their courage back and to be the force in shaping America that they had been 200 years ago.
And Glenn, we're rallying pastors to not only log on to this page and become a part, but there's a pledge that they can actually take and sign up to become a part of the Black Robe Regiment today. And I'm seeing a fresh movement starting in our nation. I mean, we're waking up to the challenge and to the call. And there are meetings that are breaking loose around the country now of pastors coming together.
Tell me the difference from a year ago. What was it like a year ago to now?
I think there's a greater sense of awareness, and I think there's also a call for a greater sense of unity, and we realize that we've got to unify together to really get back to the foundations of this great nation.
Okay, hang on. Does that mean unify in the way that was spoken about by our founders with Father Abraham? Unify. We disagree on theology,
Yeah.
Yes.
but we come together on...
Yes.
We've got a culture to save, we've got a country to save, we have freedoms to save, and we have churches, and that's where we'll discuss theology. But when we're saving a country or saving a culture, that's a different thing, and there's all sorts of cooperation.
I think it's interesting. I think you're wanting clergy to behave as prophets, to use that
Yeah,
prophetic
there you go.
voice,
That's right.
to speak out against sometimes unpopular things, but have the courage to speak out and address them.
How do you do that in many of our churches where you depend on the money?
What you're finding is the churches that have regained their voice are the ones statistically that are growing the fastest. The ones that are weak-kneed and weak-spined are having trouble. Statistically, right now, in any given month, 60% will be in church, but 67% of people think the church is irrelevant today.
Okay, back in just a second. With our final minutes, we're talking about the Black Robe Regiment, and we have Moss with a question. Go ahead, Moss.
Faith seems to be more frequently absent from the younger generations. How do you foresee the Black Robe Regiment becoming a part of your new youth initiative?
You're asking this of me? You will find out very soon. I am putting together something that, you know, one of the reasons why I'm leaving Fox is to target the youth, to make sure that we go for the youth. You know, I think we've made our point here, and Fox does a great job of keeping people informed. I've got to go find a way to go to the youth. And David and I have discussed some different things that we will be doing in a new initiative that we will talk. But how does a pastor come out?
We have one of my greatest encouragements, Glenn, is there is a resurgence of a great hunger for faith and for action among our teenagers. And our teenagers are just growing by leaps and bounds. Thousands of kids coming each week and mobilizing to engage their lives to make a difference. They want to rally around the truth, and they want to rally around a cause of justice.
There's nothing nothing makes you more miserable than stuff. I mean, without, you know, it just makes you miserable. And I think that this generation is better than us in many ways. And they've been raised on stuff, and they'll split one way or the other. And the ones that are going the right way are tremendous. Yeah. Yes, you are Michael.
Yes.
Michael.
Glenn, big fan. I just want to say before I start my question, I actually used your quote, "Question with boldness, speak without fear, and hold to the truth," as my yearbook quote.
Holy cow.
As I graduate.
Thank you.
I attend St. Edmund Prep High School in Brooklyn, and in my two history classes last year, AP US History, and this year in AP US Government, I've just never taught about the Black Robe Regiment from the Revolution. I just want to know why. And
David?
Well, they're trying their best to keep people of faith out of the public arena. And so how in the world would they dare to teach that it's people of faith who created the public arena they're trying to throw them out of?
Right.
So this is contrary to everything that would be a philosophical political agenda. I mean, what the courts are doing and legislators, et cetera.
It really is impossible to be able to restore something without the cornerstone. Right. You can't rebuild it without the cornerstone.
That's right.
You know? And I think that's, you know, the thing that let me end where we began, not on the end of the world, but on the trip to Israel. That is the original place where man first spoke to one God. That's the place where Abraham...
Foundation stone.
It is the place.
And if we're coming home.
Yeah, it is. It's the
right.
world coming home and saying, "Hey, Dad, wow, have we been screwing this up?" And returning home. Back in just a second. For more information on how you can get involved in the Black Robe Regiment, follow the website at the bottom of the screen and go to glennbeck.com if you would like to stand for Israel, restore courage in your own life, whether electronically, personally as a group, or in Israel. No matter where you are in the world, go to glennbeck.com. From New York, good night, America.